I still remember the first time I met Ria. We were just 15, two lost teenagers who somehow found comfort in each other's chaos. She was loud, confident, and full of life, the kind of girl who could walk into any room and make it feel alive. I was the opposite, quiet and observant, more comfortable in the background, the one who listened rather than spoke. But somehow, our differences fit perfectly, like pieces from two different puzzles that somehow made sense together. We became inseparable almost instantly. We shared everything, our secrets whispered in the middle of the night, our silly dreams about the future, even our harmless crushes that we swore would last forever. She used to say, "Aisha, we're soul sisters. Nothing can ever come between us." And I believed her, completely. I trusted her the way you trust sunlight to rise every morning. As time moved forward, life began to change faster than either of us expected. We graduated from school and got into the same university. I was excited, not just because it was a new chapter, but because I wouldn't have to face it alone. Ria was by my side, and to me, that felt like enough. University life suited her perfectly. She loved the attention, the parties, the new faces, the endless opportunities to shine. She was always at the center of everything, laughing the loudest, speaking the most, and somehow drawing people toward her without even trying. I didn't envy her. I admired her. I always thought that's just who she is. I, on the other hand, stayed focused on my goals. I wanted to build something of my own someday. Maybe a small design studio, a place where creativity could breathe freely. That dream kept me grounded while Ria soared through the social whirlwind around her. Even though we walked different paths, we always found our way back to each other. Late-night talks, coffee runs, sharing clothes before events, it all made me feel that our bond was unshakable. She'd still call me her anchor, and I'd laugh, thinking how lucky I was to have a friend who made the world brighter. But slowly, things began to shift. I didn't notice it at first. The little things, the way she'd interrupt me when I spoke, or the slight irritation when I got attention for my work, felt harmless. I thought it was just normal friendship tension, the kind that comes and goes. But something deeper was changing. It's strange how the same light that once warms you can start to burn if you stay too close for too long. That's how it felt with Ria. I had always been comfortable standing behind her spotlight, happy to let her shine, proud even. But little did I know that one day, that same light, her light, would turn harsh and blinding. And I'd find myself standing in the dark, wondering when everything had started to change. Back then, I had no idea that our story, which began with laughter and shared dreams, would one day become a lesson about trust, envy, and betrayal. But that's the thing about friendships. They don't always break in one big moment. Sometimes they crumble quietly, one small crack at a time, until the foundation you thought was unshakable collapses before you even realize it's falling. It began with Arav. He was new on campus, quiet, charming, and effortlessly confident in a way that didn't demand attention, but somehow always received it. Everyone noticed him the moment he walked through the university gates. He had this calm energy about him, like someone who knew who he was and didn't need to prove it. But out of all the people he could have spoken to, he noticed me. At first, it caught me off guard. I wasn't the type to draw attention. I preferred to stay behind the scenes, helping others shine. But with Arav, things felt different. Our first conversation happened in the library. He asked for help finding a book I'd already checked out, and what started as a simple exchange of words turned into hours of quiet laughter and easy conversation. He wasn't like the other boys on campus. He didn't brag, didn't flirt carelessly, and didn't play games. He was real, honest, grounded, and thoughtful. The kind of person who made you feel seen without even trying. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something genuine blooming inside me. Ria noticed, of course. She noticed everything. When I told her about Arav, she reacted exactly how I expected, teasing me relentlessly. "My best friend finally found her prince," she'd say with an exaggerated sigh, nudging me playfully. I laughed, blushing, not realizing how quickly that laughter would turn into something else. Something sharp. At first, she seemed happy for me. She'd ask questions about him, encourage me to spend time with him, even help me pick outfits when we met for coffee. But as days passed, I began to sense something different behind her smile, something faint but unsettling. She started joining us more often, showing up uninvited during our library sessions, making jokes that weren't funny but forced everyone to laugh. I brushed it off, thinking I was just overanalyzing. But soon those moments piled up. I began noticing the way her laughter grew louder when he was around, the way she'd casually touch his arm when making a point, or how her eyes sparkled a little too much when he spoke. It was subtle at first, so subtle that I convinced myself I was imagining it. After all, this was Rhea, my best friend, the girl who knew everything about me, the one who promised that nothing could ever come between us. She couldn't possibly be jealous, right? But small cracks began to show. Her compliments turned into backhanded remarks. "He's cute," she'd say, then smirk and add, "though a bit too serious for someone like you." I'd laugh awkwardly, unsure how to respond. Then came the unnecessary digs, comments about his background, his family, how plain his choices were. I didn't understand why she said those things. It wasn't like her, or maybe it was, and I had just never noticed before. Still, I kept quiet. I told myself she was just being protective, maybe teasing too much. But deep down, something didn't feel right. Her tone had changed. Her presence felt heavier, as if she was no longer standing beside me, but slowly, quietly stepping in front of me. Then one day, everything changed. Abruptly, cruelly, and without warning. The thin veil that covered her intentions began to tear apart. And when it did, I realized something painful. Sometimes, the person you trust the most doesn't stab you from the front or the back. They smile, look you straight in the eyes, and twist the knife right where it hurts most. It was the night before my birthday, and everything felt perfect. Or at least that's what I thought. Arav had been acting secretive for days, sending short messages and giving vague answers whenever I asked about plans. I assumed he was planning something special. He had even mentioned talking to Rhea, saying she was helping him arrange a small surprise dinner. I remember smiling at that, thinking how lucky I was to have both of them in my life, my boyfriend and my best friend working together to make me happy. I spent that entire evening getting ready with a stupid grin on my face. I even messaged Rhea to tease her, saying, "You better not spill the surprise." She replied with a winking emoji and said, "Trust me. You'll remember this night forever." I didn't realize how right she was. When I arrived at the restaurant, I felt my heart race with excitement. I looked around for Arav or Rhea, expecting balloons, a cake, maybe a few close friends waiting to yell, "Happy birthday." But what I found instead froze me completely. There she was, Rhea, sitting at a corner table. Across from her sat Arav. Their heads were close together, and her hand rested casually on his. For a moment, I couldn't move. My breath caught in my throat, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. The air around me felt heavy, like it was pressing against my chest. They noticed me almost at the same time. Arav's face turned pale as he jumped to his feet, fumbling for words. "Aisha, wait! This isn't what it looks like," he stammered. His voice sounded distant, meaningless, drowned out by the ringing in my ears. But Rhea didn't even flinch. She leaned back in her chair, her eyes locked onto mine, her lips curling into a faint smirk. "You can't blame me," she said coolly, "if someone realizes they picked the wrong girl." That sentence, it tore through me like glass. For a second, I thought I might break apart right there in front of them. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even ask for an explanation. I just stood there, completely still, feeling every piece of trust I had ever given her shatter inside me. Then I turned and walked away, because some betrayals don't deserve a reaction. Some are so deep that words would only make them smaller. I remember walking aimlessly that night. The city lights blurred through my tears, but I kept moving, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Every memory of our friendship replayed in my mind. Our first sleepover, the promises we made, the secrets we shared. It all felt poisoned now, as if none of it had ever been real. What hurt the most wasn't losing Arav. Deep down, I realized he was never the foundation. He was just a part of the story. But Ria, she was my family, my confidant, my other half, the person I thought would stand by me through everything. And she had chosen to destroy that, for attention, for jealousy, for reasons I might never understand. That night, sitting alone on a park bench under the streetlights, I made myself a quiet promise. I wouldn't let this betrayal define me. I wouldn't let their choices turn me into someone bitter or broken. But I also knew one thing with absolute certainty. The girl I had been before that night. The one who believed in unbreakable bonds and forever friendships. She was gone. The days that followed were brutal. At first I thought the shock would fade, that people would see the truth if I just explained it once. But truth didn't stand a chance against the way Ria could spin a story. She had this effortless way of making lies sound like poetry. Soft edges, a laugh at the right moment, a memory rearranged into something prettier and easier to believe. Before I knew it, the campus had its own version of that night. A neat, tidy story where I looked jealous, bitter, the kind of girl who couldn't accept being left behind. They said I was obsessive, that I'd sabotaged my own relationship out of insecurity. They whispered about late-night messages I never sent and scenes I never caused. People repeated her words because they wanted to, because her voice was louder, more practiced, and somehow more convincing than the trembling honesty I could offer. Arav didn't defend me. He stood on the sidelines like someone who had lost his map. Maybe he felt guilty. Maybe he was afraid of becoming the next target. Either way, his silence felt like another betrayal. It hollowed me out more than the night at the restaurant ever could. I stopped going to classes. Walking through campus felt like stepping into a theater where everyone knew their lines, and I was the only one still trying to remember mine. So I retreated. I shut down my phone, ignored messages, and let the world narrow until it was nothing but the four walls of my room. Friends I'd had for years asked if I was okay. I lied and said I needed time. Family sent concerned texts. I read them and put the phone away. The silence around me grew thick and comfortable, and for a while I thought that hiding would protect whatever was left of me. But silence has a strange way of doing work you don't notice at first. In the quiet, I could finally hear myself again. Not the hurt or the frantic thoughts, but the steady, small voice that remembered who I used to be. It started as a whisper. Remember what you wanted. Remember the studio. Remember your art. The whisper got louder each day. Anger flickered sometimes, bright and hot, but it never took root. What grew instead was something colder and steadier. Determination. Not the loud, vengeful kind you see in movies, but the kind that plans in small, exact steps. It was patient, it waited, it watched. I thought about how Ria had managed to twist a moment into a myth. She had redrawn our history with one confident signature, and everyone had accepted the new lines. If she could do that, then so could I. But I would shape my truth differently. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't counter her with name-calling or late-night rants that could be edited into more lies. I decided I would build something real, something visible, so obvious that it couldn't be dismissed as bitterness or imagined jealousy. I would make my truth undeniable through work, through proof, through a life rebuilt stronger than before. So I began, slowly. I returned to my sketchbook with a focus I hadn't felt in months, turning pain into form. I worked on designs that spoke without explanation, small shows of what I could do, projects that required people to look, to listen. I showed up quietly in the places that mattered, a workshop, a mentor's studio, a campus exhibition. Each time I let my work speak for me. I answered questions with calm, not with reproach. I learned to carry myself the way I wanted to be seen, steady, competent, unafraid. Meanwhile, the rumors kept swirling like dust in a room. Some people believed them forever. Others stopped caring once the novelty faded. That was a lesson in itself. You can't control what everyone thinks, but you can control what you build. I let Rhea keep her stories. I let others talk. I focused on making the truth, my truth, so solid that it would eventually sink through the gossip like sunlight through fog. I wasn't planning a dramatic reveal. I wasn't plotting to humiliate anyone. I was simply reclaiming my life in the only way that felt honest, by becoming the person I wanted to be, the kind of woman who didn't break under betrayal, but used it as a foundation to stand on. And somewhere in that slow, quiet rebuilding, the idea of revenge shifted. It no longer looked like destruction. It looked like rising. Months passed, and slowly, I began to rebuild the version of myself that had been shattered. The bitterness that once lived inside me started to fade, replaced by something stronger: purpose. I stopped thinking about revenge as a loud act of payback. I started seeing it as quiet creation. Every sleepless night, every tear, every ounce of humiliation, I poured it into my work. My designs began to take on a different life. They weren't just assignments or sketches anymore. They were stories, confessions stitched in color and shape. They reflected everything I couldn't say out loud: pain, betrayal, transformation. It surprised me how people reacted. My professors started noticing the depth behind my work. A local art magazine featured one of my pieces in their student showcase, calling it raw and hauntingly personal. That recognition reignited something in me. Not pride, but the realization that my silence had power too. When the university announced their annual exhibition for emerging artists, my mentor personally invited me to submit a collection. It felt like the perfect stage, not for revenge, but for truth. Meanwhile, Rhea was still around, more visible than ever. She and Arav were now officially a couple, flaunting their relationship across campus. The same people who once gossiped about me now fawned over them like they were the golden pair. Every time I saw them together, a dull ache would rise in my chest. Not jealousy, but disbelief at how easily two people could rewrite a story. One afternoon, I was in the design studio working late as usual when Rhea walked in. She looked stunning as always, perfectly composed, wearing that smug confidence she carried like perfume. She pretended to glance casually at my canvas before speaking. "Still painting your heartbreak?" she said with a little laugh. "Guess we all have different ways of moving on." For the first time, her words didn't sting. I looked up at her, calm and steady. "Just wait," I said, a faint smile on my lips. "My next piece might surprise you," and it did. When the night of the exhibition arrived, the art hall buzzed with energy. Students, professors, and local artists filled the space, moving from one display to another. My installation sat in the center of the gallery, a series of 5 large portraits under a single title: The Mirror of Lies. Each portrait represented a stage: trust, doubt, deception, exposure, and rebirth. I used stark contrasts: warm tones fading into dark shadows, fractured glass elements layered into the frames. It was emotional but elegant, raw but deliberate. Every detail spoke in whispers, not shouts. But the final piece, the centerpiece, was different. It was larger, positioned at the end of the display, like the truth everyone had to walk toward. It showed 2 women standing face to face. One was smiling, confident, radiant, adored by the crowd around her. The other was crying, not weak but wounded, with eyes that looked straight at the viewer. Both women wore the same necklace, a delicate silver chain with a tiny infinity charm. That necklace wasn't random. It was the same one Rhea had given me years ago, a symbol of our so-called eternal friendship. When people walked past that painting, they stopped. Some leaned closer. Some exchanged looks. Whispers began to spread, soft at first, then louder. The resemblance was undeniable. Rhea's signature features were right there on the canvas. Her eyes, her hair, that same confident smirk. By the time the evening reached its peak, the meaning of the installation had spread across the room like electricity. Everyone knew who it was about and who the liar was. Ria arrived late as usual, expecting to own the night the way she always did. But when she saw my work, her smile froze. Her eyes darted across the pieces, and for the first time, I saw something I'd never seen in her before. Panic. She tried to laugh it off, saying it was just art. But the murmurs around her said otherwise. The people she once impressed were now staring, not with admiration, but with curiosity and quiet judgment. I didn't say a word. I stood near my display, answering questions about my process, thanking people for their kind words. I didn't need to explain who the Mirror of Lies was. The art did that for me. By the end of the night, Ria's perfect image, the one she had spent years polishing, began to crack under the same spotlight she had always loved. Her charm couldn't mask the truth anymore. The same crowd that once worshipped her was now questioning her. I left the exhibition quietly, my heart steady. I hadn't shouted. I hadn't sought revenge in the usual way. I had simply turned my pain into art and let her reflection do the rest. The campus buzzed for weeks after the exhibition. Whispers followed Ria wherever she went. People who once adored her began avoiding her, the same ones who used to hang on to her every word. Every glance, every laugh around her carried a trace of mockery now. Social media became her battlefield. Posts, stories, vague captions, all her desperate attempts to control the damage. But the more she spoke, the worse it got. Screenshots surfaced, old chats leaked, people connected dots she never wanted anyone to see. Arav finally saw through the illusion. He confronted her publicly, demanding to know if everything she'd said about me had been a lie. Her silence was answer enough. Their breakup was messy, loud, and humiliating, just like her need for attention had always been. I watched it all unfold from a distance. I didn't need revenge speeches or grand gestures. My work, the truth, had already done what words couldn't. When she finally cornered me in the courtyard, her eyes wild, her voice shaking with fury, I didn't flinch. "You ruined me, Aisha!" "You think you won?" The crowd around us went still. I looked her in the eye, calm and steady, the way you look at someone who's finally seeing the consequences of their own choices. "No, Ria," I said quietly. "You ruined yourself. I just held up the mirror." She froze. For the first time, there was no comeback, no fake laugh, just silence. And that silence was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. Time moved forward, and for once, it moved in my favor. Opportunities began to open up like doors I never thought I'd walk through. My art was featured in galleries, my professors praised my originality, and brands reached out for collaborations. The same emotions that once broke me had become my greatest strength. People admired how my designs told stories of truth, pain, and healing. They said my work felt alive, like it spoke directly to their own hidden wounds. I didn't tell them that every line, every shade, was a piece of my past stitched together into something beautiful. Ria, meanwhile, became a shadow. The girl who once craved attention now avoided it. Her followers vanished, her friends drifted away, and her laughter, that loud, confident sound, was nowhere to be heard. Eventually, she left the city without a word, her absence barely noticed. Then one evening, months later, my phone buzzed with a message. "I'm sorry. I lost everything." For a moment, I just stared at the screen. My heart didn't race, my hands didn't shake. I felt nothing but calm. I could have replied, offered forgiveness, or maybe a final remark to close the loop. But some stories end better in silence. So I locked my phone and let it go, because I finally understood something she never would. Revenge isn't about destroying the other person. It's about rebuilding yourself so completely that their betrayal no longer defines you. And that peace, quiet, steady, unshakable, was the sweetest victory of all. Life has a way of teaching lessons we never asked for, but somehow needed. When betrayal shatters your trust, it feels like the world ends. But really, it's just shedding what was never real to begin with. I used to think revenge meant hurting the person who hurt me. I thought exposing Ria would heal the pain she caused. But I was wrong. The real revenge was finding peace, walking through the fire and coming out untouched, stronger and freer than before. People like Rhea might win for a while. They lie, manipulate, and dance under the spotlight until the truth catches up. And when it does, it doesn't scream. It whispers, loud enough for everyone to hear. If someone's ever broken your trust, don't let bitterness consume you. Let your silence speak. Let your growth become the answer. Because there's nothing more powerful than showing the world you can rise without dragging anyone down. In the end, I didn't ruin Rhea's life. I didn't need to. I just held up the mirror and she destroyed the reflection herself. That was the moment I understood. Revenge isn't fire, it's light. And when you let your truth shine, it blinds every lie ever told about you.